This is Talkback, 721-1290 or 1-800-568-5309.
This is Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290 and 98.3 FM. KGVO, Missoula's news and weather station.
Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome. It is, we're Thursday already, the Thursday, October 17th edition of Talkback. I'm Peter Christian, Mr. Nick Christensen over there. Good morning, Mr. Nick. Good morning. Oh, sorry. Do I have you? There we go.
Good
Sorry.
Morning.
Mike is on now. All right, welcome. Everybody, Talkback is brought to you this morning by 123 Seamless Gutters. Family-owned and operated, serving all of western Montana. They're protecting the foundation of your future, helping you with your gutter needs. Call 406-240-2669. Phillips Janitorial can clean both your home and your business, and your satisfaction always guaranteed. Call 406-260-6617. Y West Storage is out at the Y on Two Smokes Way. Now, if you need a storage unit, here's the number, 406-510-0590, because at Y West, we are making room for you. And by Harrington Surgical Supply, where appointments are preferred for mastectomy fittings and custom compressions, but walk-ins are always welcome.
The views and opinions expressed on Talkback are not those of the staff, management, or advertisers.
Okay, good to have you along, everybody. And we are expecting a guest here in the studio any minute, Susie Hedalen, who is running for the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. And, go ahead, Nick, please.
I was going to say, she'll be with us at 8:15.
Great.
So we know. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. So for now, then, that means we have the opportunity of open phones. So if there's something on your mind, why don't you give us a call, 721-1290 or 1-800-568-5309. And I'm looking outside what used to be my patented exclusive weather window, and I'm actually seeing what looks like it might be a little bit of fall out there. We've got a little rain, got some frost in the forecast next couple of days, and so it looks like seasons are finally going to be changing. So anyway, whatever might be on your mind this morning, at least for the first few minutes, we are expecting Susie Hedalen running for the Office of Public Instruction, which, of course, is currently held by Elsie Arnson. She has been a two-term superintendent of public instruction. So
she's termed out, right?
Yeah, she is termed out. She can't run for re-election. That's the way it is in Montana politics. So as far as our Constitution goes, anyway. Anyway, so the phone lines are open. What's on your mind this morning? Is there something going on? Maybe something in your neighborhood? Maybe something with the city council or the county commissioners, something that you have been wanting to talk with somebody about, and you haven't had the opportunity.
You didn't tell us how it went moderating the debate the other day.
Oh, yes. Thank you for asking. The debate on Tuesday. Again, a big thank you to the folks at City Club for taking a big risk and asking me to moderate the debate. It was between Chris Kuldice, of course, and Josh Slotnick. Josh, of course, is the incumbent in the county commissioner race, and Mr. Kuldice is his opponent. Of course, we've had Mr. Kuldice here in the studio. We've had Josh on several times with County Talk. It was a pretty interesting discussion. They both have their own distinct styles. Chris is kind of soft-spoken, very, very business-like. And, of course, Josh, he's kind of theatrical, and he loves to make a splash wherever he goes. So it was a good debate, and the tables. The way it works at City Club is each one has an opening statement, and then at the end of that statement, we have I get to ask a question. So the question I asked both of them is, we all know that taxes are going to go up every year. That is just the way it goes. But my question to each of them is, what are you going to do to cut spending within the county? And the first thing Chris Kuldice says, well, I'm going to sell Marshall Mountain.
Oh.
So that was one
all
of
that
the,
for nothing.
Yeah, you bet. So anyway, phone lines are ringing. 721-1290 is our number, 1-800-568-5309. We are expecting our guest, Susie Hedalen, to be here with us by 8:15 this morning. So we're looking forward to having her here in the studio and taking your questions to talk about your child's education. The Office of Public Instruction is the office she is pursuing. So what's going on there, Nick?
You want to take Dave Sanders really quick?
Sure, Dave.
To clear something up from yesterday.
Hey, Dave. Good morning. Welcome calling. Thanks for calling back. What's on your mind, sir?
Well, good morning, Peter, and good morning, Nick. I just wanted to make sure, because there was an erroneous report sort of roaming around. I don't know if it was your station or another one, probably another, that, in fact, the Montana Public Service Commission had approved of an MDU interim rate increase. And, in fact, the commission did not approve that on a 4-1 vote. So I think some other station might have run an erroneous report.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't us.
I just wanted to clear that up for the listeners in your area.
Well, thank you for pointing that out. We appreciate it. That's very conscientious on your part. We appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, sir.
And thank you. And he was on our guest yesterday. He was the chairman of the Public Service Commission. So we had a great conversation with him, by the way. So stay with us. We're going to take a break, and hopefully Susie Hedalen will be joining us here very soon to talk about education issues in the state of Montana. So if you want to get in and get in on the opportunity to visit with her, you can get on the phone now if you'd like and wait, and we will be happy to continue that when we come back right after this.
Well, Dennis Bragg with your latest weather. Rain likely again Thursday afternoon, mostly cloudy and colder with highs not even breaking 50 degrees. The chance of precipitation at 70%, easing to 20% this evening. Lows dropping into the 20s by Friday morning, so there is a possibility of some mixed rain and snow showers that will mainly impact higher elevations above 5,000 feet where there are winter weather advisories. Clearing by Friday morning, though, means a hard freeze, then some sunshine returns Saturday with highs close to 60.
All right, it's 13 minutes past 8. I'm Peter Christian. That is Mr. Nick Christensen right over there. We are awaiting Susie Hedalen. She is running for the Office of Public Instruction, Superintendent of the Office of Public Instruction. So we hopefully will be hearing. We have our doorbell right next to our studio now, so we'll be able to hear it.
Well, she's calling. She's calling us at 8:15.
Oh, she's calling us at 8:15.
Yep.
That's even.
She'll be on the phone.
That's even gooder. All right. Mm-hmm. So anyway, all right. 721-1290 is our number. Again, if you want to get in the queue, if you have a question for the person who wants to be the superintendent of all of the public schools in the state of Montana. And with my many conversations with Elsie Arnson, I do know that there are well over 430 different school districts in the state of Montana. And, hundreds of schools, hundreds and hundreds of teachers, thousands and thousands of students. And it is the focal point where we want our children to be able to go in, get a good education, leave. If they want to go to school, continue at the University of Montana, MSU, or wherever with the higher education, they can do that. And it creates, of course, it's one of the foundations of our society is public education. And so I know that you have feelings, you have thoughts about it. Maybe you have some criticisms you'd like to share with Susie, because she is running to get your vote to be in charge of the Office of Public Instruction. So there you go. Anyway, we are waiting for her call, and So if there's something about public education that has maybe your kids have grown and graduated out of that, maybe you've got a young family and your children have not yet gotten ready for school. So there are lots of reasons to focus attention on the Office of Public Instruction and, of course, our public schools, because that is where the bulk of our kids are going to be receiving their education.
Well, and we've obviously seen some of the reports about test scores not going super great when it comes to math and literacy. And I know when Susie was on last time, that was kind of something she focused on and talked about, and something that she wants to obviously put a lot of attention toward. And if I remember right, it was reading, writing, and arithmetic, kind of getting back to our roots a little bit here. And because obviously, you hear some of the stories coming out of the school system now and some of the things going on, so some people are for it, some people are against it, but our test scores can't suffer because of that. So we'll have to see what Susie has to say on that topic.
You bet. And when it comes to testing, it's something that's done, I think, twice a year, and so that you can have a benchmark. And ordinarily, Montana, I believe the last time out of 50 states, we were like maybe around 30, 35, ranked 35th. So somewhere below, if you will, the 50% marker. And states like Massachusetts, I believe many states more on the East Coast seem to, for some reason, test better than our kids do. But I will say that I didn't see any, as I was looking at the scores of all 50 states, I didn't see any that came up to 100%. You know, I mean, because that would make every child a genius, if you will, I guess, in those school districts. But anyway, we are hoping for the best. As we just mentioned, Elsie Arnson has been the superintendent of public instruction for the last 8 years. She is termed out, and she will not be able to continue in that job. And what's going to happen whenever there is a new superintendent? A whole new culture usually comes in, a whole new way of doing things. I know that there are many staff members. There might be some staff turnover, things like that. So that's what elections are all about. And this is definitely an elective office. I know Susie has been running very hard. She's been on the show before, and we look forward to having her on again.
Yeah, looking at a story that you wrote not super long ago, the reading proficiency for grades 3 through 8 was 44.2% for 2023 to 2024. So obviously that's something that's slightly concerning there too.
You bet. Okay, so I believe we may be getting Susie on the phone here. So what we will do, I'm hoping that's her. Yeah. Okay. You're welcome. Is that Susie? All right, let's get her on.
She's on.
Oh, hey, Susie, good morning. How are you, ma'am?
Good morning. How are you?
Doing fantastic. We were hoping to have you in the studio, but we're glad you're on the phone with us. So welcome. It's good to be talking with you. Now, for those who are unfamiliar, we're about a minute and a half away from a break, sir. Let's just take these 2 minutes to get acquainted with our audience. Tell us a little bit about Susie Hedalen.
I am your Republican nominee for State Superintendent of Schools, Susie Hedalen, and I am just really excited to bring my experience of being a teacher, principal, and superintendent across the state for almost 2 decades to the table for the state of Montana for the Office of Public Instruction.
All right. And so with that, we'll just go ahead and take our break now. And if you have a question for Susie, who wants to be the superintendent of public instruction for the state of Montana, for the Office of Public Instruction, basically overseeing all of Montana's hundreds of public schools, give us a call at 721-1290 or 1-800-568-5309. We're coming right back after this.
Small businesses are the heart of America. But you don't have to go it alone. As the nation's largest nonprofit resource of expert business mentoring, SCORE has helped millions of entrepreneurs build their businesses for free. Get the connections, education, and guidance you need with SCORE. We're ready to help. Find a mentor today at score.org.
Okay, we are back on Talkback, and Susie Hedalen is joining us on the phone right now. She's running for the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, and so we are going to go right to the phones and say good morning to Susan. Susan, good morning. You're on with Susie Hedalen. Go ahead, please.
So, Susie, could you please contrast yourself with your opponent without mentioning the name of your opponent, and tell us why you are unique to the position? Because I have heard that your opponent has never been a classroom teacher, and I'm going to get off and let you talk.
All right. Thanks for the call, Susan. And Susan, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Susan. This is Susie Hedalen. I have been a teacher, a principal, and superintendent for nearly 2 decades now in Montana. And I think that is really important experience to bring to the table because we have a large state with a unique landscape, as you were just discussing. And, it's critical to understand the differences from rural Montana to our AA districts to our reservations to, all of the different areas across the state, and the challenges vary as well as, what the strengths. So I started as a teacher in Helena School District, and I took my first admin job in Grass Range. So I have lived, the differences, and it's been an incredible opportunity for me. And I think that that's really important to bring to the table. What I do every single day currently as the superintendent that I am, I will be charged with at OPI. So I oversee transportation, I oversee school nutrition, special education, mental health support, all of that, large school budgets, hundreds of employees, and that is exactly what I will be charged with at the OPI, and that's why I believe I'm, the best candidate with the most experience.
Well, I will say that looking over the past, until Elsie Arnson was elected, the Democratic Party's held basically held that position that you're running for basically a long time. And when Elsie came in, she kind of upset the apple cart and began to do things differently. And so are there things that prior administrations or perhaps even Elsie has done that you are going to stay with? Or what are some of your new ideas that you'd like to advance?
I would like to make sure we continue to advance our opportunities for high school students, and there has been some good legislation, and I believe that with Governor Gianforte and I working together, as well as the Department of Labor and many of the other organizations, for example, I've been endorsed by the Montana Contractors Association and Montana Building Industry Association. They have their statewide meeting in the Flathead today and tomorrow, actually, because of all the work I've done with them to get students into the trades and pre-apprenticeships. We're trying to build that bridge between industry and our businesses and schools to create our career pathways for students and get them that hands-on experience. That's something that I'm very passionate about. My husband's an electrician, and we know that we need our young people to be prepared for that next step. And if you look at the recent information, I've met with the chambers across the state, and if you look at the recent survey results and what they're seeing in the field, they need students to get those soft skills as well as some of the technical skills to be ready for their positions.
You bet. Let's take another call before we have to take a break here. Jeff has been waiting. Jeff, you're on with Susie Hedalen. Go ahead, please.
Hey, good morning, Montana, and good morning, Susie. I just got my property tax bill for 2024, and in there was a 56% of my bill, as nearly $3,000 is going for education. That's $250 a month that I'm paying to the state of Montana to educate our youth. I'm not adverse to that, but as a brass tax kind of guy, I look at anything else I spend $250 a month on. And earlier, just before you came on, Nick read a statistic of 44% literacy rate in K through 8 school grades for our students. So we're paying more and getting less. And the teaching used to be a vocation, a calling, and it seems to have turned into a profession. And I think we've let things like certification make us think that we're getting the best teachers out there. And I think in many cases, not all of them, and probably not even most, but in many cases, we're not getting people who are called to teach. We're getting people who have chosen it because for some other reason. And I did vote for you. I want to let you know I voted already this week. I voted for you, but I didn't vote for you because of anything that I saw that's going to change. And so Peter stole a little of my thunder, but I just want to know, what can you do to change the situation, or are the unions so entrenched? Is the system so set on its course that it's like an aircraft carrier? You can't turn this sucker around because it just takes too long, and you can't do it in 4 years.
Well, I'll tell you what, Susie, that's going to require a longer answer that we have. So what we're going to do is we're going to hang on to that question. I know Susie is developing her answers. We'll take a break, come right back. And by the way, all the regular phone lines are open at 721-1290 if you'd like to visit with Susie Hedalen, running for the Office of Public Instruction for the superintendent position. We'd love to hear from you. She's going to be on till 9 o'clock. So 721-1290 is our number, or you can use the KGVO app. We'll be right back.
Introducing a fresh new way to save with your Baker's points. Now you can choose between saving on fuel or saving on your next purchase with new Rewards Cash. You'll still earn points every time you shop at Baker's. Then when you're ready to redeem your points, you can choose to save up to $1 per gallon at the pump or redeem your points to save on your next purchase. It's a fresh new way to save. Your points, your choice. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Not available in all locations. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
Dennis Bragg with your latest weather. Rain likely again Thursday afternoon, mostly cloudy and colder with highs not even breaking 50 degrees. The chance of precipitation at 70%, easing to 20% this evening. Lows dropping into the 20s by Friday morning, so there is a possibility of some mixed rain and snow showers that will mainly impact higher elevations above 5,000 feet where there are winter weather advisories. Clearing by Friday morning, though, means a hard freeze, then some sunshine returns Saturday with highs close to 60.
Okay, we are back on Talkback, and again, thank you to Jeff for his excellent question about the fact that we're paying a lot of money for our public schools, and looking at the average test scores, you can understand why people would question the methods that give us the scores we have. So, Susie, if you could put that all into perspective, because you're in the industry, if you could give us the inside look and tell us what's going on.
So I know that we can improve our reading and math scores. It will take a little bit of time, but I believe that I can accomplish great things once I get a high quality team with the level of experience we need at the state and support the incredible teachers and school leaders we have out there. So that's what I'm aiming to do. I believe we need to get education back to basics. So we've got to create those strong foundational skills in reading, writing, math, and science, and we need to make that the main focus and give teachers the tools they need to get that really important work done. So that would be first and foremost. That foundation is critical so that our students have the ability to go on and succeed. We know that you need to be able to, read by third grade, because then you go from learning to read to, from reading to learn to learning to read. Sorry, I just said that backwards. But that's really the important foundation. And so we've got to focus our area there. I've seen it done in schools. I've been part of that in schools where we have went from, the lowest performing to the top with high quality professional development for staff and the right tools for teachers. And I know we can do that across the state of Montana by really focusing the right amount of time on the right subject areas.
Okay, let's get Skip is waiting. So, Skip, good morning. By the way, several phone lines open at 721-1290 if you want to talk with Susie Hedalen. Okay, Skip, it's all yours. What's up?
Hey, thank you, Peter. And thanks for coming on this morning, Susie. I'm down here in Ravalli County, and I've seen you at a couple of different meetings, like Lincoln Reagan's and things like that, and you've done a nice job laying out your ideas. I do believe that your background and your resume is much closer suited to the job that you're running for, and I wanted to know if the things that you want to accomplish, have you been able to talk to any legislators and maybe start putting together some things that would help, I'll say, turn that aircraft carrier around a little bit? In some unique ideas maybe that Susie's going to bring to the table that certainly Elsie didn't bring.
Okay.
And I think you understand, and good luck. I think Valley County is all yours. Go ahead.
All right. Thanks for the call, Skip. Susie, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Skip. And I also didn't get to finish. I want to make sure I address the funding questions that Jeff answered, and I think I can tie those together. I have been working with legislators. I am currently the vice chair on the Board of Public Education, and I have been working with legislators in that capacity as well, and to make sure that we properly fund our schools. We are redoing the school funding formula for the first time in over a decade, and this is going to be a really important chance for us to get this right and make sure that we fund schools from the state properly. And we need to make sure we get more money to the classroom. And we have incredible legislators working on efforts like the Teach Act to make sure we get them right and get them shored up so that they're accessible to more schools across the state. And this will be very helpful as we move forward. So I've been working with legislators on school safety legislation, on school funding, and many other initiatives that are important to me, mental health. And I'm excited about the upcoming session and think that there will be a lot of great work done.
All right, let's get. Go ahead. Sorry.
Nope. You go ahead.
Okay. We have a couple more folks waiting on the phone. Jerry is next. Jerry, good morning. You're on with Susie Hedalen. Go ahead, please.
Thank you for taking my call and letting me ask this question or issue. I'm a retired architect that has worked with a lot of school districts over the years, and I'm also a longtime taxpayer. And I'm concerned about the reports that we hear of families coming across the southern border and entering the United States legally or illegally. Do you know what kind of impact that might be having on Montana schools and what challenges the school districts might have trying to address some of their needs? And I'll get off and listen to your answer. Thank you.
Thanks for the call. So please go ahead, Susie.
There are many areas that have students from all over the world coming in. It's definitely not just the southern border. So I have been talking with my colleagues that are working through that situation and finding ways to, communicate with those families and provide the supports they need. Our job is to educate, boys and girls once they hit our door, and that's what we are charged with and doing. So that is an important part of the work, and that is a great question. We have seen a lot more of that, and we do need to make sure we're prepared and ready. We have seen more students, even in the rural communities, enter that do not speak English. And so at the Office of Public Instruction, I would definitely have a team that had supports in place and a well laid out plan to support schools in that process and make sure that they had ample staff to do so. We need to make sure we're providing customer service to our schools across the state of Montana, that we're responsive, and whether that is, answering the phone or deploying staff to the schools to make sure that that's happening appropriately, I'm ready to take that challenge on.
So do all public schools necessarily have someone on hand to help teach children who don't speak English or don't speak it proficiently?
No, they do not. But there are great tools out there. Obviously, we have technology that can be helpful, and there are guides to, there's information and resources and best practices to make that happen. And we just need to make sure that we're supporting schools in that process and that plan that they're putting in place for those students. They do need to check their proficiency when they arrive so that we can ensure they're making growth towards learning English. And so I want to make sure that schools are prepared and ready to implement the process that needs to take place. That doesn't mean that every school is going to have, someone on staff, but we can have plans and tools ready for them.
Sounds good. With that perfect timing, we're up against a break. We have Don and Emmett who both want to visit with you. Susie Hedalen's joining us here on the phone. She's running for the Office of Public Instruction, the superintendent position currently held by Elsie Arnson. She's a Republican running for that seat, so we're going to come right back with more of Talk Back right after this.
If you served, we want you to get the health care and benefits you earned. We want you to come to VA.
There's never been a better time to apply. Under a new law called the PACT Act, we've expanded VA care and benefits to millions of people who served and their survivors.
No matter where you served or how long you served, check out va.gov/PACT to learn more about what VA can do for you and your family.
Come to VA.
We are back on Talk Back, and we're continuing our conversation with Susie Hedalen, who is running for the superintendent position for the Office of Public Instruction. And I believe Don is up next with his question. Good morning, Don. What's on your mind?
Morning. Getting back to funding, my daughter just started her second year as a grade school instructor here in the state, and she is currently working a second job part-time during the school year and full-time during the summer to make ends meet. And I was just curious if any of the funding you're talking about through the legislature is either aimed at or earmarked towards increasing teachers' wages.
Good question, because Montana, I believe, statistically has the lowest paid teachers, or at least the lowest starting pay in the country. If you could address that.
Yes, the Teach Act is aimed to directly impact starting teacher salaries. And that is going to be very beneficial to schools in many ways. It's not just for, the very early starting teachers, but for teachers in their first, few years or more of teaching. And I think that we will be able to see that help out a ton. Schools are working hard to figure out how to implement that. And then, once school administrators of Montana and others come out with that roadmap, I would like to be a partner in that. I've been part of the discussion going forward on how we can make that something that can be, like I said, accessible to more schools across the state. That will make a big difference. And there is a need to fund schools and, increase that teacher pay. One of the things that is holding us back is the teachers' unions and the negotiations. The teacher pay is set at the local level between the school board and the teachers' union. And they are often, advocating for the teachers at the higher end of the pay scale. And that is one of the roadblocks that we have. So we definitely need to get more money to the classrooms. One of the things I want to make clear is important to me is to reduce the administrative burden that we have on our principals and superintendents. We are constantly filling out reporting and compliance-based information for the Department of Education and the OPI. We fill out report after report after report, and that is why we have to have so many administrators doing so much work when we really need to be spending our time supporting teachers, working with families, and improving instructional outcomes. So that's just a second spin on that. Thank you.
Well, unfortunately, we don't get to see how the soup is made, if you will, or the stew is made. You know what I mean? We see the child go into school, they come out of school, and how was school? Oh, it was fine, Mom. We don't get to see how all this fits together from an administrative standpoint.
Yeah, and one other really exciting thing that's coming up through legislation from last session is the school health care trust. So we are hoping to see the school health insurance be greatly reduced. The amount that the schools are paying as well as the teachers. So they will actually be taking home a lot more of their pay, and that will reduce the expense of the schools so that they don't need to go to the taxpayers for as many levies as I believe our caller, Jeff, was referencing earlier. I do think we need to make sure we are funding schools adequately and schools are using, the funds that they have responsibly so that we are not putting it back on taxpayers with local levies.
You got it. All right, let's get Emmett on the line. Emmett, good morning, and thanks for holding. You're on with Susie Hedalen. Go ahead, please.
Oh, thanks for taking my call. Well, I'd like to harp on something and pound on something that is a passion of mine that I've been just carrying the torch a lot about and pounding a lot on this show and other shows. And it's about my outrage about, the social engineering of the kids and outcome-based education. In other words, these rules in schools, as you say, you can't hug your close friends or wrestle with them or embrace them, or, the homosexualization of the children, the transgendered stuff, the liberalization, the 1619 project, whatever you want to call it, all the isms. We could go on for hours. I'm completely opposed to this. If I had kids in school, I would take them out and homeschool them. Since you are a Republican, are you against or for these things? I'm assuming as a Republican, you'd probably be more against these things than Arnie Elson, or
Elsie Arnson is also a Republican, by the way.
Very good at names, that kind of thing, and I just got up. So if you could please answer these questions,
All right.
They're passionate.
All right, thanks for the call. All right, Susie, go ahead, please.
Schools need to be a place of learning, and we need to make sure that we are educating, not indoctrinating. And that is something that I take very seriously as well. As a school teacher and school leader of many years, your job is to educate students, to teach history as it happened, to teach reading, writing, math, and science, like I said, to teach cursive as our Constitution is written in. We need to make sure we're teaching those foundational skills, and we need to leave the other social aspects to the parents. And I believe we have great teachers across the state that want to do that and that want to do that important work of, their skilled profession that they're trained in teaching their subject areas. And we need to give them the tools and empower them to do that. And we need to leave a lot of the other things to the parents. So I feel strongly about that as well.
Now, is it up to each individual school? Say, if a parent calls up the principal and says, "Hey, would you mind if I sat in on my son's math class or English class or whatever?" Is that allowed, or how does that work?
There are different policies in each school. You're exactly right. Those things go through the local school board. However, parent and family engagement is really important. And I believe that parents and teachers working together is the key to success. And what I've been talking with my staff about, I have a phenomenal English teacher in Townsend. She's been there long before me, many years. And she'll come to me and say, I have this group of junior boys. There's no way they're going to read this novel I've been teaching for however many years and be engaged. Can I pick something that is current and relevant? And I say, absolutely. Let's just write a synopsis, send it home. The parents can sign off on it. Every time we do that, we're building trust between the family and the teacher, still giving the autonomy to the teacher to be creative and use, new current literature. But we're just engaging the family. And then they also have a better understanding of what their students are doing and learning in school, and have that opens up that avenue for them to have the conversation with them about what they're reading. And I think that parents have the right to know what their students are learning. And when we send those things home or include the parents in those meetings when we're adopting new curriculum or materials for the school to use, we're building that trust. And I want to build that trust between public schools and parents, because, like I said, they have the right to know. And there is data that shows that parents being involved in their students' education, shows improved scores and outcomes like we've been talking about.
Sounds good. With that, we're up against a break. We have Doug waiting to visit with you. 721-1290 is our number, 1-800-568-5309. Our guest, Susie Hedalen. She's a Republican candidate for the Superintendent of Office of Public Instruction, and she wants the Superintendent of Montana's public schools. We'll be right back after this. Why wait for... Welcome back to Talk Back. Hi, Peter Christian. Nick Christensen over there taking your phone calls, producing the show. Joining us on the phone is Susie Hedalen, a Republican candidate for Superintendent of Public Instruction for all of Montana's public schools. And Doug has been waiting. Doug, good morning. You're on with Susie. Go ahead, please.
Hey, Susie. Thanks for joining us here in the little town of Missoula, Montana. Got a quick question here. We ran into an issue at a school. I will refrain from naming names and all that good stuff, but where the math teacher was correcting papers for doneness and not correctness. And we've seen this, and by the time they get to Sentinel with the bigger school system, they're absolutely kind of a train wreck when they get into the math side of things. And the teacher's been doing it for a lot of years. What is your approach, or how would you urge the principal, because the principal knew that it was going on, how would you urge the principal or system or superintendent to kind of tamp this down, or how would you work that? How would you confront that type of situation?
Susie.
Thank you. Great question. So the role I see the Office of Public Instruction playing in this is that we need to be out providing professional development across the state and getting in front of these issues. We need to be sharing best practices and, by getting education back to basics and providing these advanced opportunities and giving the teachers the tools they need. I really think Montana can be a beacon of excellence for education. I think there are, there's just so many great teachers out there, and we just need to be sharing best practices in everything from curriculum to how you're implementing it. We know student engagement is huge, and, whether it's grading or reviewing your data, we need to show best practices and provide that professional development from the Office of Public Instruction. And that's something I'm very excited about as someone who's coming from the building. I have been a teacher, I've been principal, I've been the superintendent. I understand the different roles and what can be done, and I have solutions and ideas for those different dynamics. One thing I do want to share is that we know from serving on the Board of Public Education, I know that we are not sending our students to college prepared for math. I also know that with the trades. So I want to make sure that the math pathway that students are on is relevant to the direction that they want to go in. I want to make sure parents are involved in those decisions and know what the options are and opportunities are for students so they can sign up for the right classes and the pathway that they need to be ready for college or their career. So we have math for the trades. Why don't we get those classes done while they're in high school so they're ready to enter the workforce? And if they are heading, on a medical pathway, for example, we need to make sure they're in those high-level math classes. So I have been talking to the Commissioner's Office of Higher Education and others on how we're going to change that and make sure our students are more prepared for math. We have way too many students taking remedial math after high school, when they enter college. And then families are having to spend a lot of money to make up that difference. So it's definitely something we need to tackle in Montana, and I have a lot of ideas. And because of my partnerships and collaboration and with all of these different groups, I'm ready to take that on.
I'll tell you what, we are up against the point where this is the point where I want to give you exactly a minute to jump on your soapbox and tell people why they should vote for Susie Hedalen, if you wouldn't mind, please.
Yes, thank you so much. Susie Hedalen, Republican nominee for State Superintendent of Schools. I am the only candidate that has been a teacher, principal, and superintendent across the state of Montana for many years. I believe that it is critical that we put someone in this seat, that we put a superintendent in the superintendent seat, because all of the important duties of this job I have experience in. I know how to work well with teams of staff to make a difference and make positive educational outcomes for our students. I know how to run a budget. I know how to oversee transportation, health, nutrition, all the different facets that OPI handles, like I said. So I'm excited to do this. I want to work with parents and teachers to build that trust and make better opportunities for student outcomes and increase those opportunities. I've been working with legislators on funding solutions for schools.
Okay, real quick. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're running out of time. Just real quick, give me your website one more time.
SusieForSchools.com.
Excellent. Susie, thank you for being with us today. We appreciate it. Thanks for taking all of our questions and answering so completely. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed joining you. Have a great day.
You bet. And thank you, ma'am. Well, we're going to shift gears and talk about the Secretary of State's office when we come back. Jesse James Mullen is going to be in the studio with us, taking your phone calls as well. We'll be back.
This is Talkback, 721-1290 or 1-800-568-5309.
This is Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290 and 98.3 FM. KGVO, Missoula's news and weather station.
Welcome back, everybody. It's hour number 2 of Talkback for this Thursday, October 17th. Peter Christian here, Nick Christensen taking your phone calls this morning, producing Talkback. And Talkback this morning is brought to you by Harrington Surgical Supply, where you can feel confident in Harrington Surgical Supply's discreet and knowledgeable guidance on a multitude of products and medical supplies. Also brought to you by 123 Seamless Gutters. They're the family-owned and operated business serving all of Western Montana. They take care of your gutters so you don't have to. Call 406-240-2669. Also brought to you by Y West Storage out at the Y on Two Smokes Way. If you need a storage unit, the number is 406-510-0590 because at Y West they're making room for you. And at Phillips Janitorial, they offer both residential and commercial cleaning for your home and your business, and no job is too big or small. Satisfaction guaranteed as well. Phillips Janitorial, 406-260-6617.
The views and opinions expressed on Talkback are not those of the staff, management, or advertisers.
Okay, we are back on Talkback, and we are talking about elections because this is a very, very busy time. We appreciate the candidates making themselves available to us. We'll say thank you to Susie Hedalen, who was on with us just a little while ago. And Jesse James Mullen is in the studio this morning. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me on again. And actually, I got my workout in this morning coming to the studio. Your repair guy was putting a new motor in on top of the building and didn't have any help to get that 90-pound to implement up the ladder. So I got to see the great view from the KGVO rooftop.
Well, I hope you're getting union scale for that. Well, thank you for your help. We appreciate that. All right, so let's talk about Jesse James Mullen. Now, I know you're running for Secretary of State against the incumbent, Christy Jacobson, and this is not your first time on the show, but for those who missed your first visit, tell us about yourself, your background, and why you're doing this.
Well, and again, thank you for having me on.
Sure.
It's always a pleasure to be on the station. I live over in Deer Lodge. I'm a business owner, family man. I have 5 children, 4 daughters and a son. My background is in the newspaper industry. I have a number of newspapers here in Montana. I have a bookstore as well, and they really focus on rural community journalism. And that's been one of the goals of my company, is to ensure and protect journalism in rural communities in this state. One of the reasons I decided to run for this office is because I had seen what I perceived as a real problem with misinformation coming out of the Secretary of State's office, especially with Christie's predecessor, Corey Stapleton. And it rubbed me the wrong way as a former journalist, and I wanted to be able to maintain accountability and be in an office where we can ensure not just the Secretary of State's office, but the governor's, AG, OPI, all of these offices are held to a higher standard.
Now, specifically, if you don't mind, what specifically is what did Corey and Christie, if you will, the 2 Republicans who were preceding you? Is it because is it a party matter, or is it a matter of policy, or what are they doing that you're not really on board with?
You know, I wouldn't say it's a Republican versus Democrat party matter. I do have some issues with Christie's more reliance on just the Republican Party, as opposed to this should really be an apolitical office. It should be nonpartisan, but it's not. What had happened during Corey's term was a lot of misinformation, and what was a throwing of the county clerk and recorders under the bus, and a lot of questioning of the electoral process in our state that resulted in our clerk and recorders and their staffs being harassed by conspiracy theorists and I mean, there was even in Jefferson County, a young woman had her tires slashed. We heard a story about that over in Yellowstone County as well. And then with Christie coming into the office, when they sent out the misinformation about same-day voter registration, we're both have media backgrounds, and we both know that if it hasn't aired or it hasn't printed, you can pull it back. There's no reason to have to send out false information to Montanans, especially on our reservations and in college towns, saying that they could not register to vote on Election Day. It was blatantly false.
All right, and so what do you suppose led to that? I mean, why put out that what you say is misinformation? Because obviously, same-day voter registration has been upheld over and over again in Montana. So why would they do that?
Well, I think it's to a certain degree pandering to a small portion of the electorate in the state that donates and participates very heavily in the primary process, but it's a blatant politicization of the office. In an ideal scenario, people don't worry about the Secretary of State because they stay out of the limelight and they do the job. They make sure that business services represents the small businesses of the state well. You can call in, you can get your paperwork filed quickly, you can set up a doing business as or your LLCs without any problems, and make sure that the county clerk and recorders have their election materials in a timely manner. But right now, we have a Secretary of State who's constantly in the news for failing to meet deadlines or creating political standoffs, being pulled in front of the Supreme Court and facing potential ramifications for refusing to turn over ballot initiatives. It's something that is highly political, and we just want somebody to do the job.
Now, we're up against our first break. So, by the way, if you have a question for Jesse James Mullen, join us. He's here in the studio with us, running for Secretary of State to replace Christie Jacobson. So if you have a question or a comment, the phone lines are open and free. It's 721-1290 or 1-800-568-5309. We also have the KGVO app. We would certainly appreciate it. If you haven't downloaded that yet, please do so and use it, because the Message Us button will get those messages right to Nick, and we'll get that right to Jesse. So we're going to come right back with more of Talk Back, hopefully talk with you and your questions after this.
Dennis Bragg with your latest weather. Rain likely again Thursday afternoon, mostly cloudy and colder with highs not even breaking 50 degrees. The chance of precipitation at 70%, easing to 20% this evening. Lows dropping into the 20s by Friday morning, so there is a possibility of some mixed rain and snow showers that will mainly impact higher elevations above 5,000 feet where there are winter weather advisories. Clearing by Friday morning, though, means a hard freeze, then some sunshine returns Saturday with highs close to 60.
Okay, we are back. This is Talk Back. I'm Peter Christian. Nick Christensen over there taking your phone calls. And our guest here in the studio is Jesse James Mullen, running for Secretary of State. So let's do a deep dive into what's going on right now, which is the election is underway.
Yeah.
And so in your view, what is the best way to handle that for, obviously at preparation stage? Now we're actually in the election stage. We have until November 5th to get our ballots in. And are you the least bit concerned, or do you have concerns that the various counties will have problems counting and revealing the vote totals when all is said and done?
Well, one of the real benefits of the electoral system in the state of Montana is it is heavily reliant on our county government. And Montana's small governments are some of the best in the nation. Our counties do excellent jobs running these elections. Most of the work of the Secretary of State is supposed to be done in the lead up to the elections.
Right.
It's supposed to be done when they're providing training manuals to the counties. Something that during this term didn't happen until after most of the training was already completed. Then at the end of the election, certifying the results that come from the counties, I'm not worried about our county governments in the state holding fair and secure elections. They've always done an amazing job. They will continue to do a great job. I just wish they had a little bit more support from the Secretary of State's office.
Now, when you say a little more support, what support has been withheld or not apparent?
Well, when I did my tour of the state, and I've spoken with well over half of the clerk and recorders and elections officers in Montana, one of the biggest issues has been the lack of consistent advice, the lack of resources when it comes to legal expertise. When it was Bob Brown, Linda McCulloch, any of these former secretaries of state, if there was an issue at the county level, they could call the state and get good advice. That's something that's gone out the window. And maybe in this, what people call about lawfare society, they're very reluctant to provide any kind of assistance. They say, talk to your county attorney.
Right.
And, that's the last thing we need is 56 county attorneys with no experience in these legal election matters giving 56 different opinions. That is something that we should be able to rely on our Secretary of State to provide at least this is how we interpret it, and then go talk to your county attorney. When we talk about resources provided to the counties, updated training manuals, making sure your election judges have the training items they need before they start training. That's just common sense. That's some of the most basic standards that should apply to any company or government enterprise. And to not have that, to miss those kinds of deadlines, it's just a dereliction of duties.
No, I know on November 5th, everyone is hoping that at least we'll have some sense of where the election is going. But it takes time to count all those votes, the outlying counties, areas, especially statewide races. It always seems to be a lot of toe tapping, waiting to see if your candidate or if our candidate, whatever, has been victorious. And many of those votes are very close. So how would you, as Secretary of State, make sure that the votes are being properly, legally counted?
Oh, absolutely. And that's, again, it comes to proper support from the Secretary of State's office, making sure that our county officials have the resources that they need to ensure that they have those safe and secure votes. Because, again, it's our counties that are running these elections. As long as they are supported and as long as they have the resources they need to do their job, we will continue to have safe and secure elections. And we don't have the problems in Montana that a lot of other states do. We might have to wait a little bit for Cascade County and some other areas, but we're not going to be sitting here 3 weeks later wondering who won.
Yeah, and so are there counties or cities, or if you will, or small municipalities that probably don't have the technological wherewithal to do the job that, say, a Missoula or a Billings or a Helena can do?
Well, that is the case. A lot of our smaller counties have extremely tight budgets.
Right.
And if you talk to many of our county commissioners or clerk and recorders, you hear a lot about these unfunded mandates coming down from the state, requiring more and more of them, but with no additional resources to make that happen. If you're in, say, Liberty County and the state says you need to do this and it's going to cost you an extra $5,000, but we have nothing to give you for it, they don't have anywhere to pull $5,000 from. This is a very small county with a lot of additional resources.
Now, what kind of things are you addressing? Are there any specific instances where the counties are saying, I'm sorry, we just don't have the funds to do that particular ask from the Secretary of State's office?
The most recent one, and it's something that I would hope the counties would be able to do, would have been the mandate to record, maintain, and broadcast either digitally audio recordings of the county commission meetings, or if you're a larger county, to have the video resources to do that. And, statewide, they maybe had $70 set aside for the interpretation of it, but every county had to figure out how to fund it on their own. And they're pulling from other areas. We have a state that continually talks about having our county government cut their expenses. Well, I tell you what, if you're not Missoula County, you've cut your expenses. They're already at the bare bone. We can't continue to legislate focused just on Gallatin, Missoula, and Flathead. We have to really keep in mind that there's a large swath of this state that are doing a great job managing their resources and have very limited resources.
Well, I will say I just had the pleasure and the privilege of moderating a debate between one of our current county commissioners and a challenger. And the whole aspect of voting and how to handle election, it didn't even come up in the debate. Mm-hmm. So obviously we must be doing something right here.
Yeah, and again, our counties do an amazing job, and Missoula County in particular has provided most of the educational resources for the other counties in the state. And that is something that should be coming from the Secretary of State's office, but for the last decade plus, it's been Missoula County filming the videos, doing the educational training for video training. Most recently, they did a new updated video because the last one was 10 years old, And other counties in the state were having to pause when they're training their election judges, saying, ignore that. That's illegal now. We can't do that anymore. But finally, Missoula County was able to put together more training content.
So Bradley Seaman and his staff have been championing what you're talking about here.
And apparently Bradley was in that original video before he was in his current position, and that's part of what motivated him to get into.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I tell you, Bradley's a great partner. He and his staff, it doesn't matter. You know, we get folks calling our show all the time complaining about something to do with elections, and I bring it to Bradley, and he gives the answer, and he said, if you have a problem with that, come see me. Well, and so that's very transparent.
Yeah, that's not an uncommon story, actually. When I was covering the 2020 election, I went to a county commission meeting where they were talking about going to an all-mail ballot, and some of the misinformation from the state had come out and resulted in a group of guys dressed as Revolutionary War soldiers. There were 6 or 7 of them, and they're screaming and shouting at the commissioners. Well, Jody, the Powell County clerk and recorder over there, you know, she took her abuse, but toward the end of the meeting, she's like, you know what, if you're really this passionate about it, why don't you sign up to be an election judge? And a number of those people did sign up for it and continue to be some of the strongest advocates now for the safety and security of our elections in the state, because they were passionate about it. They were misinformed by the state, but once they received the training, once they became part of the process with the county, they know how safe and secure our county elections really are.
All right, so give us a call. We're up against the break, 721-1290. Our phone lines are open. Also, if you have a question for Jesse James Mullen, who wants to be our next Secretary of State, we'd love to hear from you. Phone lines starting to light up a little bit. We're going to come right back with more of Talkback, and hopefully your phone calls and, of course, your messages through the KGVO app. We'll be right back after this.
Montana State News Network.
I'm Dennis Bragg. National Weather Service forecasters still warning of the potential for heavy mountain snow Thursday night into Friday, with a chance of the high country along the Montana-Wyoming border receiving as much as 8 to 14 inches of snow, with heavy wet snow and rain showers along the foothills. Wednesday's cold front did push down temperatures west of the divide, but the change was pushing very slowly across the state throughout the day. The Gallatin County Sheriff's Office says any information from the public is crucial as they continue to investigate the apparent murder of a Belgrade man near Big Sky over the weekend. Detectives are hoping to hear tips which could help them piece together how Dustin Kajersom died prior to his body being found in his tent Saturday morning. That includes calls from anyone who might have seen Dustin in the Moose Creek area or anywhere in Gallatin Canyon between early Thursday afternoon and early Saturday morning, and may have seen his black Ford pickup or any suspicious activity. Senator John Tester welcoming news that the Environmental Protection Agency will expand cleanup efforts in Butte to include 7,200 more homes. Tester had been pressing the EPA on the issue since last year when Butte residents complained there had been a lack of transparency on the cleanup plans. Tester said the expansion of lead cleanup plans shows what happens when people work together. Get ready to see some new equipment if you're flying out of a Montana airport this winter. Jason Laird says the changes are designed to make it easier to board.
Montana airports are rolling out new technology in hopes of speeding up security lines. 5 major airports are now using the TSA's latest credential authentication technology, or CAT2 system, which integrates facial matching. These machines compare your photo ID to a real-time image, streamlining the check-in process. Participation in the facial matching system is optional, and no photos are stored. Travelers concerned about their privacy can opt out with alternative ID methods. The CAT2 units are now in place at airports across Montana. Reporting for the Montana State News Network, I'm Jason Laird.
This is the Montana State News Network.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Tom has been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. I was really starting to worry.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk.
Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Hey, welcome back to Talkback. 721-1290 is our number. We are rolling right along, talking with Jesse James Mullen, candidate for Secretary of State on the Democratic ticket. And Skip is just called. And Skip, good morning. What's your question for Jesse? Go ahead, please.
Hello again, Peter. And Jesse, I talked to you the last time you were on, and I'm going to have to repeat one thing, and that is I really believe you do an amazing job in the publishing business, and personally I hope you stay there. One of the best papers that we have access to in the Bitterroot is the Bitterroot Star, and Michael Howell especially does an amazing job presenting both sides of the coin on a lot of different issues, some of which I've actually been involved in. And so I'm going to tell you that this pamphlet that I just got from the Secretary of State's office, it's the voter information pamphlet for Montana, and I think they do an amazing job with this pamphlet, just describing, I'll say, both sides of the coin of constitutional initiatives 126, 7, and 8. And making it easy for people to understand, including the text of the initiative that's going to be on your ballot. So I thought, well, is there anything you think you can criticize about that, or you think you could have done a better job with that pamphlet as an example? Because I would hope that you have already read it. So I'll leave it at that. And,
okay.
Well, I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Skip.
Comment. And I will start, just so you know, the secret to running a good newspaper for an executive is to get out of the way and let the locals do their job. A newspaper should be a reflection of the community it serves. And really, in any executive position, you should be allowing the people on the ground in those local sites to do what they need to do. Give them the resources they need to succeed. Try to help and accommodate as much as you can. There might be times when you have to say no, but always be open and reasonable in how you do that, whether you're the CEO of a newspaper company or you're the Secretary of the State or governor. As far as the election booklet goes, I mean, this is very common practice in states to make sure that you have a detailed election booklet. I don't think there would have been any major differences no matter who.
Well, facts are facts. Facts are facts,
yeah.
right? I mean,
the people that are writing these supplemental opinions, the fors, the against, they're all, going to do that regardless of who is in this office. And there are good graphic designers, there are good people that are working to put together these sections. And I don't have any complaints about the election guides.
So you're good with that?
Oh, absolutely.
Excellent.
And I think that's something that you really have to rely on the institutional knowledge of the employees within that department. And one of my frustrations with Christie has been, this massive layoffs that they've had in that department that have resulted in funds going to out-of-state companies. And I would hope that something like this booklet will continue to be produced in Montana by Montanans, and that money can stay within the state, especially the print job portion of it.
Do we know why these layoffs occurred?
It was a cost-cutting measure.
Okay.
But it ultimately didn't result in any saved costs, because now you take, let's say you lay off 20 people in the state of Montana that are working for state government. All of that money stays in our state. It goes into your local communities. They pay taxes on it, and it's spent at local businesses. Well, we're outsourcing a lot of this work to Arizona and Maryland and Connecticut and New Jersey, and all of that money that was staying in state is being sent to other states now. And then on top of that, you still have these large costs associated with these private corporations on the East Coast and West Coast doing the work. And so not only have you reduced the income coming into Montana, you've sent it to other states, and you're not making much in the way of savings. Tie on to that the fact that Christie Jacobson has seen, we estimate probably $5 million in legal defense at this point of her career just in the Secretary of State's office. You haven't seen any real savings.
Okay, let's get another call on. This is Emmett. Emmett, you are on with Jesse James Mullen. Go ahead, please.
Oh, thanks for taking my call. Well, I think I've probably asked this question before on other election cycles, but what is a Secretary of State? What is the role of the Secretary of State? What do you do as a Secretary of State? Because I think it's important to know, what the office is all about. As far as elections, election integrity, I'm glad the elections are pretty secure here in Montana, but I guess a lot of people are worried because we've heard of shenanigans in other states. and now there's early voting in Montana. We're worried that, what's going to happen if we drop off our ballot at the elections office? Would it be tampered with? We're always worried because you hear horror stories in California and other states. So I think people are just really just trying to make sure that we have the safest election possible. I don't think it's anything personal or conspiratorial, but if you'd answer what a Secretary of State does, I'd really be appreciated that.
You don't necessarily travel from country to country like
No, you don't. Well, I will say there's a lot more to being Secretary of State than looking sharp in a suit and enabling political parties, which is part of what I worry about our current Secretary of State. The Secretary of State has to maintain the integrity of our elections. The first and foremost is credibility. And credibility is something that I speak to a lot because it takes decades, years and years to build credibility and a second to lose it all. And under our current Secretary of State, we see this constant enabling of conspiracy theorists that really cause damage to the public trust in our elections. They maintain the Business and Services Department. I own about 12 businesses in the state of Montana, newspapers, bookstores. I have some commercial properties as well. And the frustrations that I've run into in the past, especially when I was a smaller business, they shouldn't happen in any state. We need to make sure that we have a customer service-focused business services department. I do have notary publics under my employ. That is another aspect of the Secretary of State's office. They sit on the land board, so there are quite a few responsibilities. They're for not this isn't the exact term, but they're essentially the state librarian. They keep the state seal. They ensure that the documents that the legislature passed are presented and pushed on to other organizations that need that work, whether it's Montana's tribal nations or other states.
All right. We're up against a break. 721-1290 is our number. Phone lines are free. If you have a question for Jesse James Mullen, running for Secretary of State, we'd appreciate it if you give us a call at 721-1290 or 1-800-568-5309. You can also use the KGVO app. We're looking forward to hearing from you. And so is Jesse. We'll be back right after this. Hey, we're back. This is Talkback, and we'd love to have your phone calls this morning for Jesse James Mullen, running for the office of Secretary of State. He's joining us here in the studio this morning with Nick Christensen, yours truly, Peter Christian, and Susan has been waiting through the break. Susan, good morning. You're on with Jesse. Go ahead, please.
Hey there. For many, many years, from the late 70s until I moved to Montana, which was unfortunately a long time ago. Not unfortunately, but I mean, I've been here 33 years. But from 1977 until 1992, I was a reporter. And because I was in journalism and I was covering very controversial topics, I deliberately did not expose anybody to my beliefs. In fact, many people, when they read my articles, actually thought I was liberal. And I went overboard to interview people on both sides of a question. So the reason I'm telling you this is that because you are a journalist, because you run newspapers, my impression is that there might be I'm just surprised that you would come out and declare yourself a Democrat and obviously have strong opinions, and actually some of your opinions I agree with, but I am concerned that what are you going to do if you do get elected with the fact that you have been a very outward journalist and an owner of journalistic activities?
In other words, is there a conflict of interest there?
Well, and thank you. That's a wonderful question.
Yeah. Thanks,
I really appreciate that. Because
Don't let me hang up.
Okay.
Don't hang me up.
We'll keep you on.
Well, and first I want to say I was a journalist. I haven't been a journalist in quite some time. I'm a business owner. I was a CEO, and I'm not the CEO of the company any longer. I stepped down about a year ago. Montana has been very good to me and my family. My company has grown to the point where I was able to hire a CEO so I could step away from Mullen Newspaper Company in order to do this this is ultimately, it's a political
to run
for
for this race, right? To run for the seat.
Yeah, and let's be realistic. When it comes to the Democratic or Republican parties, in order to be elected in the state, you have to choose a party and pick one and run with it. Now, I had been an independent most of my adult life, and about 2.5, 3 years ago, I had a choice. I was the executive of a company. I wasn't writing anymore. I didn't have anything to do with the day-to-day of the newspapers. And like I said earlier, proper newspaper management is about the executives getting out of the way and letting the local employees do their job. I had an opportunity.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just say one more thing. I've got to jump in here then. But you are still, in some fashion, an influencer of those companies, I would guess. And I'm going to back away and let you respond to that.
I will just say that the editors at a lot of my newspapers have been much more critical of my experience running for office and stories and coverage of me than most journalists in the state have. It's a misconception to say that we have primarily liberal journalists in the state. The editor of the Silver State Post in Deer Lodge, God, if she were to hear we call her a liberal, she'd be, apoplectic. She is, MAGA is probably the best way to explain her. And that's not just the case. I just purchased the newspaper in Conrad, and I had lunch with Lou Jones, a fairly middle-of-the-road Republican from up there, after I bought the paper, to ask about what was going on in the community. And one of his complaints was that the editor of the paper was too conservative. These people, when they talk about somebody that either identifies as a Democrat or a Republican that owns media changing things, if I were to put a liberal or specifically Democratic angle on any of these newspapers, the business model wouldn't succeed. I can't own a newspaper in Cutbank, Montana or Chester, Montana and do a liberal rag and expect to have any subscribers. That's just not, if anything, I'm a pragmatist.
So does the entity match the community?
The entity has to match the community it serves. Now, if I owned a newspaper in downtown Seattle, which I don't, it would probably be a fairly liberal newspaper.
Right. But
I don't own a newspaper in Seattle. I own newspapers in rural Montana.
One of the criticisms of, quote, the media nowadays is that you're either way over on the left or way over on the right. It's CNN versus Fox, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you want to get the straight dope on what's going on, you have to watch one and go, watch the other go, and try to figure it out somewhere in the middle. Should it be that difficult?
Well, and traditionally people consume media in a slightly different way. It was, especially if you lived in a city, it was never unexpected to, if you're of a certain age, to have multiple local newspapers, to read multiple papers every single day. I think we do have some real issues with media in the United States right now. There isn't any real mass media left in Montana. And for people that want to, they can go to sites that only reinforce their opinion. I think that is a problem. But for the most part here in Montana, if you're looking at a community weekly newspaper, they're not going to put a political bent on junior high volleyball results.
I would hope not. All right. Tell you what, we are about 1 minute away from a break. I want to give Harry plenty of time to ask his question, so we'll take our break now. By the way, we also have Al waiting on the line and several other phone lines open if you'd like to talk with Jesse James Mullen. He's running for the office of Secretary of State of the state of Montana. So if you have a question or comment, give us a call, 721-1290. We're back after this timeout.
If you served, we want you to get the health care and benefits you earned. We want you to come to VA.
There's never been a better time to apply. Under a new law called the PACT Act, we've expanded VA care and benefits to millions of people who served and their survivors.
No matter where you served or how long you served, check out va.gov/PACT to learn more about what VA can do for you and your family. Come to VA.
Welcome back to Talkback. I'm Peter Christian, Nick Christensen taking your phone calls and producing Talkback this morning. And joining us here in the studio, Jesse James Mullen, running for the office of Secretary of State on the Democratic ticket. Harry has been waiting through the break. Harry, thank you for your patience, sir. Go ahead. You're on with Jesse.
Yeah, good morning, Jesse. First of all, I just want to compliment you on your job of keeping local newspapers alive. This day and age, it seems like there's a lot less of them around, so I appreciate that. But my question, seems like Christie, our Secretary of State now, is sort of pushing her partisan thoughts on, especially when it's dealing with like the constitutional initiatives. And I don't know if you agree with that, but I'm wondering, how do you convince people that that's bad, especially since other people agree with her? They think that's a good thing since they don't like those initiatives, so they think that it's good that she's, to me, seems like slow walking them or doing whatever she can to sort of mess with them. How do you convince them that's a bad thing?
Well, and there really is a little bit of a battle in the state right now, whether partisanship is the way to go forward or nonpartisanship. And I am firmly in the camp that we should have more apolitical standards for public office in the state. I'm not a big fan.
Even though you have to run as a Republican or a Democrat.
Oh, yeah, you do have to run as a Republican or a Democrat in order to win higher office in the state of Montana. And, in some ways, that is why I have been a proponent of initiatives like 126 and 127, because I think they will take the party control out of the election process a little bit and return it more to Montanans. You're not going to be able to convince everybody that reducing the control of the political parties in Montana is a good thing. But I really, truly believe that most Montanans believe that party control, especially when the parties are so influenced by the national levels today, is really a good thing. You see it in the trends emerging in the state. That New York Times poll that just came out showed that people identifying as independent and Republican was almost in a dead heat. Independents surpassed Democrats about 5 years ago. And if that trend continues, in 10 years, we might have more independents in this state than we have Democrats and Republicans combined. And I don't see that as a bad thing.
So is there such a thing in Montana as, quote, an independent party? Or is the whole idea of being independent means you're not part of a party?
Yeah, and you can work with the parties, and you can have people who have similar ideas to you. But Montana has always, we talk about this purple history of the state. When I moved to Phillipsburg when I was 20 years old, I had a couple of neighbors. One was a retired widower rancher, very conservative guy. He'd been the chair of the Granite County Republicans at one point. And his next door neighbor was a first grade teacher with dreadlocks down to his behind and very liberal. But when I was living in a little trailer park, if I went out on my little porch, I could look across the pasture, and every Saturday morning, those guys would be drinking coffee together because it didn't matter that one was a hippie liberal and the other one was the former chair of the Republican Party in the county. They knew they were on the same side. They both cared about their community. They both cared about the kids in the community. Everybody in Montana has, for the most part, had this common goal of ensuring that we have a good state for our children, for our grandchildren, a place that they can afford to live when they grow up, that they have good jobs in the state. And I think we've really gotten away from that. We cannot survive on the service industries alone. In Montana, we have to have a good, strong middle class, and that means blue-collar work, that means natural resource extraction, that means timber, and we have to have a state where people and neighbors can get along with each other again. And the only way that happens is by really shunning the national priorities of both political parties and focusing on Montana.
Does that help you, Harry? Go ahead.
Yeah, do you think Kristi Noem is using her office inappropriately that way?
You had Christy Jacobson.
Christy Jacobs, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I do think she's using it inappropriately. And that's not just Christy. I think we have a real problem at the executive level in our state of politicians being overtly political and prioritizing specifically political priorities. And it results in lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit and millions upon millions of dollars of tax money and state funds just being blown to virtue signal, to do things that ultimately don't really do anything except ensure that they can win another election. And that doesn't benefit Montanans.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for the call, Harry. Appreciate that. Okay, let's get Al on the line. Al, good morning. You are on with Jesse James Mullen. What's your question, please?
Yes, several weeks ago or more, I heard that George Soros was purchasing or in the process of purchasing 200 radio stations in this country. Are any of them in Montana? And I would like your comment on George Soros. Thank you.
All right, thanks for the call. So, have you gotten a call from Mr. Soros?
I have not, and I don't own any radio stations.
Okay,
I focus on rural print.
Right.
If Soros is buying up a bunch of radio stations, good luck to him, because I don't think he knows what he's getting into. These people that come in from outside of the industry and think they're going to flip it on its head are just delusional. When I'm in a small community and somebody doesn't like the way the newspaper is running, and they say if they want to start up their own, I'm like, let me help you. I'm more than happy to do that. I think competition, especially in the private sector, helps everyone. It helps people to grow and be better at the work they're doing. If Soros wants to toss his hat in the ring with radio, I think he's setting himself up for some hurting, but let him try it, whatever.
Well, the media, if you will, has been a flashpoint for political activity. Especially people think, well, if I control this media block, then they have to publish my bidding. I'll pass along my suggestions to the chief editor and make sure that's the editorial of the day. Yeah. Does that actually happen? Or I'm sure it does in some places.
I mean, it does, especially with the larger companies.
Right.
It starts out, and I worked for some of the larger newspaper companies in the state. I used to build customer service centers for some of them. And it usually starts out with the best of intentions. We're going to try to create common content to reduce costs on the ground. Like, let's say we're going to put together a package on, top 25 NCAA teams and send it out to all of our newspapers so they don't have to do that work on their own at the site. And then it gets more political, and standards start following. You see that a lot more in TV and to a certain degree on radio. And that has to receive pushback from staff on the ground. And a lot of times it does. Because if you are going to try to force this opinion from the top down, you're going to lose your content creators, you're going to lose your journalists. And
you'll lose your public.
Yeah, you'll lose your public, absolutely.
Right.
And then the business model stops making sense. You will not have a successful company if you continue to do that long term.
Yep, we're going to come right back. 721-1290 is our number. Jeff is waiting to visit with you, and we're going to come right back. And we have several of our phone lines are open. This is a great conversation we're having right now with Jesse James Mullen, who is running on the Democratic ticket to be Montana's Secretary of State to replace the incumbent, who of course is Christy Jacobson, and she was running for her third term? Second term, yeah. So anyway, we'll be right back after this 1 minute timeout. Okay, we are, believe it or not, rapidly running out of time. We only have about 8 minutes of time left to visit with Jesse James Mullen and a couple of callers who are waiting. So let's get Jeff on first. Jeff, good morning. You're on with Jesse.
Hey, good morning again. I want to push back a little bit. I vote conservative. I have a conservative outlook in life. And so when I look for candidates to vote for, I look for the conservative. And right now, the only place I find those is in the Republican Party. And I'm not going to pretend that every Republican that I vote for is a conservative, because they're not. But I vote for the most conservative person I can, and that's where I find them. And ranked choice voting would take that away from me. CI 126, if that had been in effect for Congressional District number 1, you would have 3 candidates on the ballot right now instead of 2. You would have Monica Trinnell, because she was the only one running, and you would have Ryan Zinke and Mary Todd. And so you would have the effect of exactly what happened in Alaska, that the Republican vote would get split between the 2 Republicans, and odds are Monica Trinnell could get voted in as a congressperson, even though she would have less of a vote if you look at total. So Alaska has tried this. Many other states have tried it. I think the last state got rid of it in 1962 before it made a comeback. Ranked choice voting is not the answer. I understand the concern about partisanship and party strength, but ranked choice voting is not the way to get rid of it. All it does is allow a minority candidate to sneak in a state where the majority are conservatives.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Well, and, to your point earlier about the Republican next to a name being a signifier of conservatism, you're probably not entirely wrong on that. It used to be a situation where you did have conservative Democrats, and We've largely lost that. I mean, a big part of the work that I've been doing while traveling across the state is returning to rural and more conservative communities and trying to, bring back that big tent experience to the political process in the state. I do want to make a point to what you were saying about ranked choice voting and 126 specifically. That is why it is tied to 127, which is what they call a 50% plus one. If they both pass, what you laid out couldn't happen because you have to receive more than 50% of the vote. And you won't have what we would call like a ranked choice, somebody with 30% becoming the elected official. The other thing I would suggest is if this were in place before this most recent election, you would have had more people running for that office. You might have had some real primaries for these positions, and that would give, let's say you're a very conservative person or you're part of that Freedom Caucus, you might have people that would want to participate in that process and not feel like they have to be forced out because the head of the party is telling them, hey, we need this other person to run and win. Because when you get past that level, you're still going to have 4 people there. Now, realistically, like let's say you're in eastern Montana, you could probably have 3 Republicans and 1 Democrat on that ticket. And in the initial round, the Republicans might divide themselves and you'll get the Democrat with the most votes. But then you have the 50% plus 1, which means you either have to have ranked choice or you have to have runoffs. And in both of those scenarios, you would probably see one of those Republicans come out on top.
I guess I want to push back a little bit more because you talked about the partisanship aspect of this, and you had talked earlier about having lunch with Lou Jones, I believe. Yep. And Lou Jones is not. I don't consider him a Republican. I think he's a person who enjoys having the position in the middle where he's a power broker. He's ostensibly Republican, but he likes to swing the people who vote with him in direction of either the Republicans or the Democrats. So I think that in reality, you don't have a party control here. That I think it's a bit of a straw man that you have a Republican Party that adheres to certain values. You have a certain part of that doesn't adhere to those core values, and then you have the Democrats, and that center part swings back and forth, even though they're nominally Republican. You can see a lot of cases where that they voted against conservative interests.
Well, and Jeff, I want to really quickly also say I've spent a lot of time speaking to libertarians in the state as well, and you do find quite a few. We have
about 3 minutes left, so go ahead and answer Jeff's question, and then we're going to get you up on the soapbox and explain why people should vote for you. So go ahead and answer Jeff's question.
And I just wanted to say that the Republican Party doesn't have the exclusive rights to being a conservative. There are quite a few independents who identify as conservative, and absolutely have spoken to a lot of libertarian groups who have extremely conservative members within their caucus. That is something that is not just for the Republican Party.
Mark Roscoe is a friend of mine and has been for many, many years, and he's a Republican. However, whenever we have him on and he says he's a Republican, I get calls from people. He is not a Republican. He's a moderate. He's more like you know what I mean. So there, these are big tents. These are big tents, right?
Well, and I think that's a great thing. They should be big tents. If you just have one perspective, that's extremely damaging to our republic.
All right. Okay. So why we have two minutes? Why should we vote for Jesse James Mullen?
Well, in that office, no matter who you have as governor over in that East Wing, with me as Secretary of State, you will have somebody in the West Wing who is determined to maintain accountability for our government and dedicated to what I call a radical degree of transparency. I've spent way too much time in journalism to ever tell you need to trust your political officials. That's a terrible idea. What you need is radical transparency to make sure that they are accountable to you. And when you have me in there as Secretary of State, being completely transparent and maintaining accountability and being accountability to the Montana public, you will begin to expect that from the other executives and the legislature as well. We have to have political officials in this state who do not respond to political parties, but respond to Montanans.
All right, so give us some contact information. If people want to donate to your campaign, where do we go to find out more about you?
JesseJamesMullen.com.
Mullen with an A or an
E-N.
E-N. M-U-L-L-E-N.
Correct.
Great. All right. Because it's that other Mullen guy, with the Mullen Road and Trail and all that. All right. Well, Jesse, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me
being with us. And again, thanks to Susie Hedalen for being with us for the first hour. And Jesse James Mullen with an E here joining us in the studio for the second hour. Don't forget your coffee, by the way.
I won't.
There you go. All right. So as we look forward to tomorrow's fabulous radio program, so Mr. Nick, well, what's coming up tomorrow, sir?
Yeah, Peter Kolb teased this earlier in the week. He will be joined by Lisa, who's one of our callers, and talking about Lisa's time as a child in Germany during the war. And she has a great story to share and a very passionate story. And so, yeah, we'll be talking with her and Peter Kolb helping facilitate that from 9 to 10.
We are very, very much looking forward to that. I've grown to love Lisa just from her phone calls because she has that wonderful accent, and she's very smart, very sharp, and I can't wait to meet her in person, and we'll have the opportunity of doing that here in the studio tomorrow with Dr. Peter Kolb, and he and Lisa have formed a friendship. And we're looking forward to hearing her story, and it's going to be amazing. From what I understood, I'm talking with Dr. Kolb about this. He can't wait to get her on the radio with us here on KGVO on Talkback. So we're looking forward to that. Get out there and make it a good day. We're beginning to slip a little farther into fall, so watch out for the frost. See you tomorrow.